Welcome to another episode of Sim Sundays. This is episode 35, and I'm actually very excited about the guest we have today on the show because this is my booking. But Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. And I'm very excited about this episode. Obviously, we've just recorded it, and it was incredibly interesting. We have Ash Vandelay, American Motorsport Twitch streamer and creator with BS Competition on the show.
This is going to be a very exciting episode, and for once, the American accents are going to be in plethora versus the UK accents.
Grr.
So, enjoy the episode, guys. Yes, sim racing. So was it this last weekend? My timetable's all messed up, but we just had a pretty major sim racing event on the calendar, ESL R1. And I did actually see you in the chat.
I was working that chat so hard.
You were. And what did you think about the event? Like, did you enjoy it?
So from an event perspective, so this is me as a viewer logging into Twitch, right? It's not as a sim racer. It's not the logistics of the event because I know some stuff happened that I've talked to some folks in there. But as a viewer watching the event and as someone who does events for a living in their 9-to-5 corporate America job, I think it was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool. They did a great job. I also come from the Call of Duty world. That's where I kind of started watching Twitch and Call of Duty, and they had these huge LAN events, right, for Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
And they constantly do that all the time. So seeing that for sim racing, for something I truly enjoy and play all the goddamn time, I was obsessed that they did that and gave it the attention it deserved. And I know it's very hard for sim racing too, right? It's not your rig. You got to ship rigs over. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. So thinking about those logistics, how they did it. The commentators did an incredible job keeping the energy up because this was the first time for it. And I thought they did a really good job with the energy-wise, introducing people, showing the personalities of the drivers so we cared a little bit more if someone lost or spun out. I think overall they did a great job. And they also listened to, I think you noticed, Chris, feedback from people in the chat. Like someone would be like, oh, we want to hear from Isaac, for example, or we want to hear from so-and-so. And they would go interview him and then like a couple of seconds. So I thought that was really cool that they listened to the live chat of what we wanted to see and what we wanted to do. So I really enjoyed it from that side.
When you refer to them listening to live chat, that's probably one of the most important things for me as a viewer. Like, I didn't talk at all in the live chat, but I was watching it. And one of the coolest things, like you said, is the fact that they did listen. Because one thing that you get from Call of Duty, because I'm actually a big fan of Call of Duty esports events as well, you never get that. It's basically like watching the NFL or watching football over in your neck of the woods. Like, you're not going to get someone in a live stream chat to say, hey, I want to talk to whoever, and they're going to go do it. It's just not going to happen. So that was a really cool aspect of it. And I actually kind of like the fact that they brought in the rigs, and it wasn't anyone's personal, perfectly set up rig for themselves, because it added a level of fairness across the board, I think. That was, okay, nobody's on their perfect rig. No one has the better pedals or the better wheel or their perfect setup. So we're all kind of on an even playing field. And I enjoyed that quite a bit.
But for Call of Duty, for example, they do bring like their own mouse and keyboards. So I do a lot of Warzone watching along when they have those large events. You can bring your own mouse and keyboard, which it's like you're just used to that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, but sim rigs, are a little bit different. But the logistics behind it of, I guess, having only 12, which is why only 12 could race. I don't know if they could not bring more. There was just no room. But I've always thinking about like LAN events in the United States. If we did something similar, just where would we do it? Space-wise that everyone can go to. I think there's a few in the U.S. of like sim racing centers, maybe 2 that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Can you tell me where they are? Because I wish we had more of them. I get so jealous when I see like Mike post a picture of his sim racing place. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I just want one of those here so that not only can I race with people, because I can race with people at home, but I can go there and like hang around and chat sim racing live with other people, because that's one thing, I guess, as sim racers, at least I feel a little isolated in my hobby, where almost nobody around me in my immediate area that I can go to dinner with and go hang out with, none of them sim race, not a single one. So going to a center like that would be so amazing, just to have the atmosphere. Like, Ash, you go to a lot of races because, you know, I follow you on Twitter, and you've been to a lot of different things where I'm like, wow, that's really, really cool. She's very lucky. but you get to go there and you get to talk about racing and you get to be around the people who love the same thing you do. Do you feel that you're a little isolated at home, or do you have a bunch of people that you can actually, converse with when it comes to sim racing or just motorsport in general?
Yeah, it's mostly, like you said, online folks that I can converse with sim racing and just motorsports. Sure, my friends that I see in person will listen to me, but at some point I feel bad for them, and I'm like, all right, I need to stop talking about this. Or if you're trying to talk about Daytona and you're like, yeah, this guy sent it through bus stop, and they're like, what the heck was that sentence? What did you just say?
Those are like all your TikToks as of late.
Yeah.
They're like, I talk about motorsport literally all the time.
Right, and it's just...
the big Daytona one that gained you a bunch of followers that you posted recently. Like, that's one of the things that I try not to do is talk to my friends about sim racing all that much, because once I get started, there's just no ending, none whatsoever. And then I'm pulling up videos and showing them, and I'm like, oh, check this out. Like, yeah, that's really fun.
I guess
so
that's cool.
I guess. That's really
I don't know, when you
neat
get a
for
group of people in the room, they all talk about the NFL, right? Like when the NFL was happening, people had their fantasy teams. A group of my friends whenever we all had dinner together or whatever, they would all start talking about their football players and their teams and who got injured and blah, blah, blah. And then I don't feel bad, because I was like, look, if you're going to make me sit through that, of something, like, I kind of know, because I'm American football, I'm aware of how to play the game, I know some of the key players, blah, blah, blah. But, like, if you're going to make me sit through the analysis and who has the better, this person got a surgery on their tendon, and if that happens, you have a 6% chance of now throwing this pass, blah, blah, blah. What? If you're going to make me sit through that, I can talk to you about sim racing a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. When it's draft season for the NFL, most of my buddies are football fans. And Tom is cringing over there as we're calling it football repeatedly.
Yes, I know you're not.
You're like, you play it with your hands. What are you talking about? Football?
Hand egg. How dare you?
Rugby. What? But when it gets to draft season and they're like, oh, did you see him in college 3 years ago? I'm like, no.
Right.
No, I did not see him at college 3 years ago. But did you see this last sim racing event? No.
Did you see him when he was in F3? And it was really good.
Like, come on. How do you not know that? It is one of those things where you should be allowed to obviously talk about it. But I guess it loses its, what am I trying to say? It loses its passion for you when you're having a conversation with someone who just doesn't know. You're like, I can tell you're just trying to be nice, and that's appreciated, but I just want to have people where I can talk about sim racing to a point where they understand it as well. It's almost why Tom and I connected so well, is because he loves sim racing, I love sim racing, and now we have this podcast where we get to invite people over and talk sim racing
more about sim racing.
Talk more sim racing.
It's one of the things that I'm pretty impressed with on your side, Ash, is your ability to create content around sim racing and around motorsport and all that. And, I'm kind of jealous because Tom knows that I've wanted to be a content creator probably for 5-6 years now, but I've never really jumped into it all in. You have your job and you have your other hobbies and things like that, and maybe you have your family. You've really dove in, and actually congratulations recently with your BS competition.
Thank you.
Where you're part of that team now. That's pretty cool. And I did enjoy the little video of them announcing you on there with the banana suit and everything. Although hopefully when you're in the banana suit, you do the Brian dance,
I try my best. I try to do the Carlton dance too, because that's a real hit with the stream. But no, we love the banana suit. I have like a closet just full of random stuff for the stream, whether it's just like a holiday themed items, or I treat stream like a kindergarten class where you have to keep it exciting in the background, so you got to decorate it really nicely.
That's the way to do it.
You got to just wear the banana suit, you got to keep the attention spans going, and I was like, how can I do that?
So talking about the content creator piece, how long have you been working at it? How long have you been pursuing the content creation side of motorsport and sim racing?
That's a great question that no one's ever asked me, now that I have to think about it really hard and pause. I started streaming, my first stream was December 2020, and then I started doing Formula One streams March of 2021, and then I think I grabbed on the F1, the Formula One game a little bit that year, and then eventually jumped into iRacing November of that year. So, yeah, about a year or so. Not that much. Not that long.
That's very surprising. I thought you were going to say something like 2017 or something crazy.
No.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Now, when you started, did you immediately start streaming with sim racing content, or like for me personally, I started with a random video game because I was like, oh yeah, I want to play games and have people watch me play games. That sounds like fun. And then eventually, you know, that wears off because, you know, you play Call of Duty and you're competing with thousands and thousands of other content creators.
Yeah.
Did you start with sim racing right off the bat, or did you start with something different?
No, so I started streaming because it was a goal of my therapist to help manage my anxiety that I'm pretty open about. So when I first started streaming, I played something that I was super comfortable with, and it was Portal. I love that game. I play it like twice a year. It's so good. It's
so good.
And it's just so fun. It's a great puzzle game, and I love puzzle games. So I started with Portal, and it takes a while to get used to talking with the camera and then talking to a chat, because it's not a conversation. You're not reading any body language that you normally would when you're talking to someone directly, or hey, I should stop talking about this, or they're bored. You know, you're not reading that, or someone found that funny because they're laughing. Yeah, you don't hear them laugh, or you hope they put an LOL emote or a KEKW in there. They find it funny. So it takes a while to get used to it. So I was like, let me just go with something I'm comfortable with. So I was doing Portal, and then me and my brother and a group of our friends home from home play Call of Duty together. So I was doing that a little bit. Verdansk, shout out. So my goal wasn't really to be popular or make whatever. And then I was like, hey, I was watching some Formula One streams, and I was like, I think I can do something a little different. The way I look at Twitch is each like stream is a bar, and each bar has their own theme, their own vibe. And, you know, my bar is going to be a little bit different. So I started doing my F1 watch-alongs with my best friend Sal and my brother David, because it helps when you have someone just talked about sports for the first time. And then people just started coming in, and they're like, hey, glad I found you. No one else is doing this that I want to watch. Cool. And no one else around me is watching Formula One that I can talk to. So it's like an internet chat room where we can just talk about Formula One while we're all watching the race.
That's an interesting fact you brought up there, is that, like, we're American. So
right.
We have a lot smaller of a group to talk about Formula One or really racing, unless you're wanting NASCAR or dirt oval. There's a ton of basically circle racing all over America, really.
Right.
Like, I live in Ohio, and within an hour, any direction, I can probably... I know, right? Thank you. I can probably get to 4 to 5 different dirt tracks. and go watch racing. But it's the oval racing, which unfortunately for me, it's still exciting because it's racing, and I understand the technicality behind racing in general. But it's just not something that I can sit for hours and hours and be completely entertained on. So I don't really go to the races all that much. But Formula One in America is just not as popular. There's a big giant barrier to entry for us, especially if we want to go to a GP, of course. I think the first one in Miami I was going to go to. I planned it, told my wife, I was like, I'm going to the first Miami GP. I'm going to spend a whole weekend there. I'm going alone because I don't want to have to entertain the kids or nothing. I just want to go watch this. And then the tickets were released, and it was going to cost me like $10,000 to go to the weekend of the Miami GP. And I'm just like, it's impossible. There's no way I can just drop $10,000 on a weekend for myself. That's just not going to happen. So there's a big barrier to entry there. And you streaming F1 content in America at American times specifically, because a lot of the time these F1 races are also just the most ridiculous start times on the planet for us.
Yeah, think about how like the side of this world. Yeah, exactly. If you're on the West Coast or even further, sometimes like Australia gets gypped a lot. It's just never good for anyone else besides Europeans.
Yeah, Tom, grief.
Sorry. Yeah, we were talking about this before.
Can you email Sky Sports, please?
Yes, I will put in a good word, because the UK is a very small place. I'll bump into them in the street, but excuse me, Sky Sports, we prefer you to move some of the races. Well, there are going to be 3 races in the US, right? Very soon.
There are. Yeah, we have Vegas now for a long time. I don't know how that they extended the contract already, but
that's going to be worse than Miami, though.
Yeah, that's going to be way worse than Miami.
And I think it's going to be a late race for the East Coast too.
Yeah, it's going to be late for the East Coast. Even worse for Tom. So he's going to get to experience the F1 woes that we experience basically 6 times a year. Haha, there you go.
Yeah.
But so there's rumors about the Vegas race, because my father lives in Vegas, and so I get a little bit of information about, chit chat around the random news and stuff like that out there. But the Vegas races are said to be purchased up by all of the hotels and the big companies out there.
Yes.
And then they're going to sell them as packages so that you get the GP weekend plus all the hotel stays and all that stuff. So they're going to jack up the price even more. And that's something that Formula One really needs to solve, is the barrier to being able to actually go see a race is so high that it makes it kind of disheartening at times to be an F1 fan.
Yeah.
Especially in the markets where, you know, you don't have a lot of races, because you're like, okay, we have 3 races in America, but there's no possible way I can go to any of them. It's actually probably cheaper for us to fly across and go to like Silverstone or something like that and watch a race over there. Ridiculous.
Yeah. This is going to be a very long thought, or like train of thought, so bear with me here. So I always complain about also F1 merch, right? Because you can go to you can buy a baseball hat for a baseball team for like, what, $20? Outside the stadium, they're selling them for like 10, right? Like you can have, or after the 3rd or 5th inning, depending what stadium it is, but usually after the 5th inning, you can buy really cheap tickets, or even, I understand there's more seats, but whatever. And it keeps, like, there is a great, you can take the whole family for X amount, and then a pretzel and a hot dog, depending where you are. It just makes sense for it to be an event with the family. NASCAR races are great because you don't even need tickets for the race. There's so much activity outside your local track during a race, whether you want to bring the family. Dover does a really good job. Local to me, so a little biased. They do a really good job. They have like a brewery come out and they set up like in the grass. So if you want to like bring you and your buddies and have a good time, and they have screens everywhere and you can watch the race from right outside the track. So you still hear the cars. You don't need tickets if you don't want to sit there. And you can enjoy all the festivities and driver signings and events outside the track. Like, it is an event. And I'm always confused that F1 doesn't do that. They're like, you have to come in and buy a ticket, otherwise you get none of this.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, yeah, because they're prestigious. And I was like, they're not prestigious. We're all a bunch of grease monkeys. The greatest marketing trick F1 has ever played is pretending they're better than every other, or just like different than every other motorsport. No, you have a garage, you have oil, you have fuel. Everyone gets dirty in there. Like, how did you convince all of us that it's like clean and pristine and fancy? No, I bet the guys rather be drinking a Heineken than whatever Ferrari champagne you're having on the podium. Like, what are you doing? Like, how did you do this?
I think
We're all just a bunch of motorsport nerds.
Well, that could be a symptom of the fact that if you look at like overhead shots of the paddock during a race, there are far more non-F1 people in that paddock than there are F1 people. Like the teams and the F1 officials make up like a tiny minority. The rest, it's all media, sponsors, like corporate tickets. It's people that have spent hundreds of thousands just to like wander around the grease monkeys, as you call them. Like that whole culture in the paddock is very, very different. Was fortunate enough last year to do some real world racing, and the paddock was exactly as you were describing it, Ash. It's like people that are they're just dirty. They're just like cleaning cars, changing tires, like oil everywhere. Just like nobody cares. Everyone's just having a great time. Like I think F1 is kind of like transcended into this whole other world where like the brand is now something very different. But it's interesting because I wonder if that maybe makes it more relatable. As in, I wonder if it was just grease. Like nobody watches like British touring cars in the UK. Like hardly anyone. Like the tracks are like half empty. It's on like channel 4 or 5 or something on a Sunday. Like very few people watch it. I wonder if it's the glamour that is appealing to people. I wonder if it's that combination of like danger, speed and glamour that makes it work as a spectacle as opposed to a sport.
I think it's the stories behind it. I think F1 has done a good job. This is the great marketing as part 2, is that they've done a good job. Again, I think like I mentioned with sim racing, that you care about these teams and these drivers a little bit. I think they can do a better job because America has like big tribalism, right? Like coming from New York City, I just hate Boston. Sorry to all your Boston listeners. I was born with that, and that's what it is. Like I'm indoctrinated into that chain of thought. Like Patriots, Bruins, boo, right? Like from New York City, that's what it is. And then other cities have rivalries like that. So I think F1 is growing in that way, but they also do a good job of telling the stories. Like everyone grew up and they're like, oh, I remember this, like when this happened with this person and this driver was fighting this driver. And that's why it's so exciting on the track. And the whole like Lewis Hamilton Max thing for the past couple of years has definitely worked into their advantage. For example, so when Lewis was sweeping it, people were just like, I guess that's cool. Like he's really fast. And it's awesome to see that talent, but they can't compare it to anyone else because he was just so far ahead of everyone else. Right. So now that there's like Max up there and Charles Leclerc, and they're like, oh, wow. The fact that Lewis swept up was really impressive, but now these other guys are catching up. We got some drama. Men love drama, and I don't care what anyone says. Sure, you don't like
who
art, like
doesn't?
Real Housewives. You like sports drama, and I understand. So don't lie to yourselves.
Well, there's also an interesting thing. The spectacle, Drive to Survive, has been looked upon by some diehard F1 fans as like, oh, they're just making up stories. And yeah, of course they are, because they need to make a show.
I wasn't there. I can't fact check them.
I guess that's also true. But like, America does like its drama more so than a lot of other countries do, especially if you just look at the TV shows that we have. And Drive to Survive, I think, was probably just them trying to get more American viewers involved. And they made it such a drama so that you could make those mental connections. You can be like, oh, I don't like Verstappen, or oh, I don't like whoever on the grid. And you can really take a stance, because you're right. I mean, we'd like to take a stance and group ourselves in with a certain tribe, I'll say. So making it super dramatic, making up some little fake conflicts here and there on the grid is ultimately good for the mindset of Americans, really. I don't know. I can't say anything for UK or any European countries, Tom. But like, even when we were over at Sim Racing Expo, Tom, Danny was saying how they have to make Sim Racing Expo bigger if they want to gain the American audience and make it more of a spectacle. And that's an interesting thing to think about, because it made me instantly start thinking of Drive to Survive and how they made it a spectacle, even more so than F1 already is, to appeal to an American audience. So, Ash, have you been to one of the Sim Racing Expos quite yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, I hear rumors that we are going to get an opportunity here relatively soon for an American side one that we can actually travel to, I'm hoping. There's been no official announcement, but
who do I email to make sure this happens? I'll be like, look, I will work for free. You need a broadcaster. You need someone walking around doing social media. Just, yes, please.
Please let it happen.
Whatever you need. Take out the trash. I'm not above any job. I will do whatever you want.
Trash lady.
I'll sweep up at night. I'll mop up. I'll clean the sim rigs. Whatever you want.
Oh, that is a job and a
hoping
half.
this happens. But, of course, no confirmation or whatever. There's a desire to bring it over here, but the interesting thing is they say they have to make it more of a spectacle. Now, if we look at things like the Call of Duty spectacle that we have now, it's almost true. Like, Americans want over the top. And if you look at a proper football game, like a soccer game, if you look at the way that they handle their events, the World Cup, for instance, they come out, they sing the national anthems, they wave, they play. You watch the NFL Super Bowl this last weekend, it's an hour's worth of just, oh, this is the biggest event in the universe. Everyone pay attention to what we're doing.
It's entertainment.
We
are here to be entertained. If we're going to invest in this and give you all our money, because we spend all this money here, we expect this level of stuff. And America's so good at that. And that's why everyone's like, I don't want ESPN to take F1. I was like, if ESPN took F1, you would have analysts. We'd have old drivers talking. They do such a good job, right? They have older football players coming in. Tony Romo was doing NFL plays, and he was calling plays before they happened. And everyone's like, how do you know this?
How do you know that?
They do such a great job in American sports to, one, make it a spectacle. You get everyone on the same page of understanding. So whether you're a veteran fan or a new fan, you know exactly what's going on when you're watching American sports. So these commentators do such a good job. And we have so many historical commentators that we know. So, yeah, I'd be obsessed if we just took over.
There's an actual incident. We just took over. F1 is ours now.
Hey, you guys remember 1776? We're taking it all back. We're coming over there now, and we're taking ours.
But they kind of have, haven't they? Liberty Media is owned by a U.S. company. Liberty Media, right, is a U.S. company, is it not?
Tom, quiet down. Quiet.
Sorry, but
don't let everyone know that. Jesus.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that Drive to Survive came out after it was taken over by a U.S. company.
Yeah.
True.
Or how the social media skyrocketed right after Liberal Media, because Bernie was like, no, you're not allowed to post anything or do anything on social media. And then they started growing on Twitter, YouTube, and it just kind of exploded. And that was great.
I agree. Now, you touched on something very interesting that I'd never really thought about in regards to like the NFL or sports in America. We have sports fans in America that actually have no idea the rules of the sport, right? For instance, there's so many times in football where me and my wife are watching. She loves football, probably even more so than I do. And she's like, why did that happen? And I'm like, well, it's the rules. This rule, this X, Y, and Z. And she goes, that's a rule? Since when? I'm like, since forever. But she loves football so much without the complete understanding of it, because football and the commentators and the overall broadcast does such a good job of including her in it that she's a diehard fan.
Yeah.
Now, there's something that's happening in, I don't know if it's only sim racing, but we'll use sim racing as an example, where there's almost like this, oh, you haven't been in sim racing long enough, you don't know what you're talking about, and in motorsport in general, where it's kind of exclusionary to a certain extent. How do you feel? Do you think we're going the right direction in inclusivity there and pushing out that overall mindset of like, oh, you haven't done this, you're not a real fan? Name every single F1 champion that's ever won if you're a real fan kind of mindset?
I like to think I'm helping because I'm very like, I don't give a crap. Like, and we can all just deal with it, right? Like I think we're slowly getting there. There's always going to be that, I think. That happens in other sports too. But in motorsports, I think is really bad currently because it's hitting that crux of new fans, a huge wave of new fans getting interested and being vocal about it on social media, which is another thing. So I think we're getting there. And for a while, it's going to be very old versus new fans, veteran versus new. But yeah, I think we're getting there. And I think with the help of certain content creators and things like that, saying like, hey, here's the educational content you needed. Here's like an inside scoop of stuff like that without any judgment. It's going to be, it's going to be for everyone who wants to see the behind the scenes look and be interested. And to kind of jump in more on that NFL point you made about your wife and like how she might not know the rules, but she's invested in it. I always want to do a video, or Tom might give us some insight, being our resident non-American on this podcast call.
Yeah, he's the minority. For one podcast, he's the one
I don't like
that's
this.
kind of the outsider over here.
I'm not used to this.
In American culture, whether it's college, NFL, and even like baseball, there's a whole football. I saw a bunch of TikToks of women and men setting up their homes for a Super Bowl party. We're inviting everyone. We're doing like a charcuterie football stadium. We're building it out of cheese and ham and crab. Right? They do all this decor. College football, tailgating. People have all these themes and stuff like that. It's huge. Like the party before and after. People even go to the game. They have their RV set up. And IMSA does that as well. Daytona 24. The RV camping spots are sold out before any of the general admission spots because they're camping. They're hanging out. They have flags up of Porsche, BMW, and they have theme stuff. And it's before games, and then baseball does this as well. Before the World Series, you'll see people holding parties of like baseball-shaped random food items. It is a huge get-together that we make it a spectacle at our homes, not just if you go to the game. We get special foods, right? You're like, oh, it's the Super Bowl, I'll get nachos today or something. Like you just make it a thing.
There's like there's the party foods where you go and you're like, okay, we're gonna only
get
buy
some
the
wings.
junk. Yeah.
And I don't know, that's also a great marketing ploy that America has done, and I don't know how, but that's great. But why is that not a thing for Formula One? Why do people not like, I'm inviting all these people, I'm going to have race car shaped food set up, I'm just going to do like Mercedes logo. And I'm always so interested. Oh, like there's t-shirts that are like, I'm a football mom. There's that culture in the United States that we're so proud of our sports, and we hold these big parties and everything's a big deal. We make it our personality. And then F1, people make it their personality, but just they don't show it, except they just talk about it. There's no party. There's no inviting people over and watching the race and holding a big barbecue or tailgate or anything. That's true. I just don't know why that's not a thing.
It's getting there. It's definitely getting there. In the UK, I would say it's getting there. When I walk through, so I'm from Newcastle, which is up in the northeast of the UK, and when I walk through the streets now, I'm seeing more and more F1 merch that people are wearing. Like people are wearing like McLaren stuff and Mercedes hoodies and like Red Bull jackets and the old like retro Ferrari jackets, like the kind of like 70s cool. and 80s stuff is you see that quite a lot now. And we have F1 parties. Like sometimes when the race is on a Sunday, we'll have people come over and we'll have like 4 or 5 of us and we'll watch the race together. But it's, I don't know. I'm not very good at it, if I'm being honest, because I can't multitask. So when the race is on, I need to watch the race. Like I'm looking at like, right, well, how many laps has this pair of soft tires been on? And when like is this guy's 1.1 seconds behind? And DRS is now available after the stage. Like I am properly in it. Like sometimes I even have like my laptop open with the F1 app where you can see all the sector times and stuff. Like I proper nerd out over it. So like I'm pretty
That's a good
rubbish at these parties because I have like a beanbag in my living room and I will like put the beanbag next to the TV so I like can't be distracted by anyone. And there's like people in the background just like, you know, having fun. And I know with my laptop like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, oh my God, this guy's got like, yeah, okay, he's fourth, but actually he's net seventh because he hasn't pitted yet. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's
that's a good
whereas
point.
With football,
too.
you can like when the ball goes out
It's
for
a 3-hour game.
Well, I was thinking of I can't even want to call it this soccer. I was thinking about soccer where like the game is essentially like reset over and over and over again, right? So when the ball is going in for a throw in or a goal kick or whatever, the game is reset. Whereas a race never resets unless there's a safety car. But even then, there's implications. Like there is no score, right? So in football, you could be 1-0 up, 2-0 up, 2-1, whatever it is, and that is like set. And if the ball is not in play, then you're reset at that score. So you don't have to follow the story. Whereas with racing, there is no score. You don't get any points until the end of the race. And so you're continually looking at these like progress bars of all the teams to try and predict who's going to be there. And everything has an effect. And there is no reset button in racing. So I find that I enjoy it the most when I'm like properly focused on everything. I want to see what's happening everywhere on the field. Oh my God. On the track. Which I think, which I don't know. Oh God. Which I think is why I'm a little bit nervous about the idea of more teams coming into F1 because there's actually already quite a lot to like focus on as a fan. But then maybe I am not, and maybe I'm in a minority. I am not the fan base that they are looking to attract because they've got me forever. Like they don't need to do anything to help keep me or attract more people like me. Like that they are looking for more people who will be able to watch a race and dip in and out because they're like, you know, going out to the fridge to get beers for people who are coming over or getting like the food or whatever it is, like who can then come back in and be like, oh, okay, I get what's happening with the race. Like I think there is a big difference between football and racing.
There, you know, you make an interesting point because take some American sports, baseball and NFL football. Well, that's, you know, there's so many media breaks built into the game and just breaks in general.
Oh my God, imagine if there was an ad break in F1.
There was in the United States when it first came.
What?
We were pissed. Yeah, when it first came to ESPN, and that's how Mother's Polish bought it out. But there were ad breaks, and we all complained about it because it was ridiculous.
Can't do that.
No,
absolutely can't do that.
That is complete nonsense.
But yeah, like the NFL, each team has 3 timeouts, but between every single play, there's a big gap. There's media timeouts where they're like, oh, we have to go to commercial, so everyone just wait.
Oh, so the game stops
Baseball.
For a commercial?
Yes, it's a commercial break.
Timeouts.
What?
Yeah.
Commercial
I'm
timeouts.
learning.
Yeah, they do that in hockey too.
That is nuts.
So a lot of the American sports have all these extra filler segments in there to, I guess, accommodate your party, if you will, or accommodate your attentiveness. I don't know. It's very
Imagine
different.
just a red flag. Like we're gonna go to a commercial, so we're just gonna red flag this race.
Everyone catching up each other.
Everyone just get into the pits.
I hate going to NFL games because when you're watching it on television, you don't realize how often that you take advantage of those media breaks and you like go to the bathroom, get a refill of your drink, get more food, whatever it may be. But when you're at the actual game, in the actual stadium, you're like, why are they not doing anything? Oh, because we're on a commercial break. This is dumb. What is happening here? So that's interesting because Formula One, like you said, Tom, 0 breaks. There is no time where you're just like not paying attention to the action because nothing's happening. You're always paying attention.
Just like on that point, even like, do you remember Spa? Was it last year or the year before? It was completely washed out. And
for
we were
4
just
hours,
we were just like watching the TV. We were just watching like a wet pit lane for like 4 hours, and the commentators were just like, "So it's still raining, and therefore it's still wet, and therefore there's still no racing." And basically just iterations of those 3 points just for like 4 hours, like not a single ad break. Like we just watched the rain for like 4 hours, and I was happy. I was happy with that.
Tom does bring a good point about. So there's so much to capture in motorsports. When a new fan turns on a game of baseball, it is 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. This makes sense. This is what's happening. Eventually, in one game, you can probably explain the rules of baseball, football. They 4 tries, make 10 yards. They kick this, it's 6. these conversion points mean that. Watching a hockey game, you can explain in one game what's happening. In motorsport, there's no way I'm going to teach everyone the rules of Formula One in one race, and like the strategy, tires, weather, all these variables, aerodynamics. There's no way I can explain to someone who's new. I can help, right? But it'll take a couple races for them to get used to it.
And each race, the pitch changes.
Oh, each race the pit rate changes. Like, why is this pit lane 21 seconds and it's 19? Like the length.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the pitch itself, it would be like playing football on a different shaped pitch every game.
Right. And then when you turn on IMSA Endurance Race after 24 hours, they're looking at the screen and the score, and they're like, who's actually first? Well, he's first in his class. And they're like, what do you mean class? And I was like, well, there's like 5 classes, different cars, LMDH. What does that stand for? Le Mans Daytona Hybrid. What's Le Mans? What's Daytona? Why is it a hybrid? And they're like, oh, Jesus Christ. Why is it GT3? What's this joke about dentist? And you're like, okay, wait a second. So I think there's that barrier to entry for new versus old fans. And that's why old fans have such, I get the toxic ones are just like, oh, new fans are ruining everything. Because they've done their time learning that. And then a new fan comes ask that question. And they're like, you don't know? No, of course we don't know. Try to explain a Le Mans Daytona hybrid to anyone, okay? That doesn't know. And we've all started somewhere. But yeah, it's that, right? You have to pay attention during races. You have to understand all these like technicalities, these variables that happen in Formula One, undercut, overcut, etc. And then DRS zones. You can't do that in one race. You can't do that in one sitting.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And I love the alternative.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love the alternative for the diehard fans, being that they have to now put up with new fans. The alternative is that there are new fans, which means it means two things. One is the sport is going to die because there's new fans. And the second, it probably means you're really boring. If no one else looks at your sport and thinks it's interesting, maybe you're just a really boring person that doesn't like something, that is spending all their time watching something completely uninteresting because nobody else has seen it and gone, oh, I'm going to dedicate my time to this too.
Well, see, that's what I was about to say. As a veteran fan, as we've been calling them, I guess that's what we'll use. As a veteran fan, wouldn't it be kind of exciting to be able to use your knowledge to teach someone and to also see their first discovery? Like they start to love motorsport and then they start to understand it, and just seeing all those like pivotal moments that you got to experience, but now you are helping someone else experience that feeling. Like, you would think that would be something that a veteran motorsport fan would go, I'm going to teach you and you're going to love it and it's going to be amazing and we're going to go through this journey together.
Look, here's the Kool-Aid. Here's a 24-hour race. Let's get indoctrinated, and this will be here. And this will be how we do it.
You're going to learn everything.
Everything.
Take notes. Oh, man. So what do you think that sim racing or motorsport in general should do to build a good, we'll just go with sim racing just because it's a sim racing podcast.
SimSunday.
Sure. Right, sim racing, that's why we're here.
So in sim racing, what do you think the next step? We just had ESL R1. It was a very successful event coming off of 2, mild events. We'll just say that. What do you think we need to do in the future to continue growing sim racing in the right trajectory?
So I think ESL kind of showed this. ESL was for the sim racing community.
It was.
So I remember someone in chat asking why Crim 6 is there. They're like, oh, they should have had Jimmy Broadbent. And I was like, I love Jimmy, don't get me wrong. He would have brought more sim racing people who already knew about the event. They were already watching with or without him, I think. And I think he talked about the event a couple times on his stream. Like, the sim racing people that he is part of the sim racing community, he would have just brought more sim racing people or people who are already knowing about it or will know about it eventually, already compete in iRacing, ACC, etc. So Crim 6, what he did was bring his Call of Duty people in, and then I'm in the chat, and they're like, what's going on? And I was like, wow, let me tell you what's happening here. You ever heard of Hockenheim? No. Great. Wikipedia it. Real quick. So this is what happens on this corner. Like, this is what you need to know. You just start indoctrinating people, right? He brought a new audience in,
it's
whether
genius.
You agree with it or not.
I actually had the same thought where I was like, why the hell is he there? And then I was like, wait, it makes sense. Same reason any of the big names that didn't have sim racing teams before are there. Grow the audience. That's it. And it makes sense.
Which is why I like that I've added NASCAR and IndyCar watch-alongs to my stream, because I used to just do Formula One, and now the F1 people are like, well, I watch you anyway, so let's learn about NASCAR. And I'm like, yeah, welcome. Let's talk about it. And now we just compare and talk about NASCAR point system that I still haven't figured out. I'll be doing math forever in my head. But I think they need to just expand their audience, not adding people who don't sim race, because then you don't have a sim racing competition against the best. But they need to figure out a way to advertise and add personality to ESL, or the sim racing or iRacing needs something that's not just cars. I think a lot of motorsport series do this. F1 does a great job of using their drivers as their personalities, and people can connect to it. Have you ever seen Duolingo on Instagram Reels or TikTok, how they're really funny and just like aggressively funny, or certain brands have just like a spokesperson? M&M's, right, have the stupid little M&M things. Yeah. People know that, and they're like, Duolingo is hilarious. I don't even use Duolingo, and I still watch their TikToks. I know about their brand. It's great. They need to add some faces. So ESL needs to either need someone who is really fun, can add that little spin on their Instagram, on their TikToks, and their social media. And people are like, this is ESL. This is the personality. They're fun. They're different. It's not just nice cars panning to the sim rigs. And it's like, great. I can't connect to a sim rig. That looks cool, but I'm not going to be dedicated to it. Does that make sense? Because with sports, we do this too. We have like there was a joke on TikTok that, sure, your girlfriend doesn't watch the NFL, but she knows who Joe Burrows is, right? Like, it's just, we find these personalities in sports, and we need to do that in sim racing, and you need to push those out there more in those stories. So they've done that with Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, which is so popular in the United States, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. Whether you like them or hate them, you know their personalities, and you're like, I cheer for them, I boo against them, I don't like them, I love them, I'm dedicated here. So we need to figure something like that out in sim racing.
I thought it was really interesting, their choice of presenters for ESL, because they didn't go for like the glitz and glamour. When I watched the final round on Sunday, it was Luke Crane from Actual Vision. So, founder of Actual Vision. He was also at the Sim Racing Expo. He founded the platform, like a big community league that obviously has done very well, and now he's moved into presenter. But he's very much like, he personifies community racing. And then you had Lewis McGlade, who has done so much of traditional sim racing commentary. Obviously, we had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, so he was there. And we had George Morgan, who's obviously known mainly for PSGL, commentating for the F1 online league with Jana Otmir. That's kind of how he made his name. So that kind of community, grassroots level racing community knew him. And then you had gamer muscle, like James, who is the most so James, he is the coolest guy ever. So I met him in the Canadian Embassy, actually, in London for a D-Box. Yeah, I know, right? Random.
How interesting of a sentence that was.
I met him there. So we were both going to this D-Box events where they're showing off their Mark V actuators, and we were there with a rally driver, and we got to go in the rig and stuff. And afterwards, I was like, "What are you doing now?" He's like, "Oh, nothing. I've got a few hours to go." I was like, "Me too." And he's like, "Well, why don't I give you a tour of the South Bank?" And I was like, "Okay." So he just gave me a tour up and down the river, just commentating essentially on all the historical significances of all of the statues and stuff on South Bank, which I didn't ask for, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. So he's such a zany guy with so much personality, but I would never in a million years have said that he was Mr. ESL. And then when I saw him interviewing people at ESL, I was like, this is so perfect, because they haven't gone for shiny, glitzy, I mean, sorry, James, I know that he himself calls him Mr. Shiny, but he's referring to his head. But he's got so much personality, so much character, and brought so much life to it. I noticed that he was a bit, not Marmite in the chat, because it wasn't 50-50, but there were a few people who is this guy? He's very zany, very wacky. But I thought it was perfect, and I thought it was really interesting to get an insight into ESL's thought process behind how to make sim racing a thing, using their broadcast, using their personality, what the decisions that they made in that first round, I thought were quite revealing.
They need to double down on that. Now he's now their face of their TikTok. He's like, this is what's coming up. This is what you need to know. Let's do this. Let's use him to the full advantage and talk about it and answer people's questions, or be on social media being Mr. Mayor about ESL and just talking about it.
Yeah,
I hope they stick with the. I know it sounds rude, but smaller names, like the sim racing names that we know and love. I hope they stick with that,
They're bigger in our hearts, okay? We love these guys. I was we know all of them. It's so great. When you turned on the stream, I was like, oh my God, it's Luke. I was watching a stream last week.
Exactly. When you see in this big esports event, I put air quotes because, it's the first really, I guess, huge esports event, if you really think about it. Seeing the people that we watch and that we relate to, and Tom and I have had the luxury of being able to interview these people, it's really cool. And it almost makes you feel more included just because of that. Because you don't have to learn a new personality. You're like, oh, I enjoy George Morgan. I enjoy Lewis. Like, this is a great show already because I like the personalities that are sitting there. Now, they could go with an American accent. Whether they go with me or you, doesn't matter. No. It's
there's enough room, I
there's
think.
enough room, right? If they come over here, they should hire some American accents, right?
Heck yeah.
But speaking of commentary, how did you decide that you wanted to start doing commentary? The first time I ever heard your voice, the American voice of Ash, was on last year's Mind, what was it, at Zando or
Zolder, yeah.
Yeah.
The 23 Hours of Zolder, Jimmy Broadbent.
Yeah. And you messed up a word and said something about your American accent being a problem or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I can relate to that perfectly. What made you actually decide at any point in your career that you were going to be a commentator and you wanted to just talk over the top of motorsport?
Chris, you ask these questions as if I have an insightful, thought out, well planned, that I've conjured this for the 30 years of my life. I woke up Jimmy's going to love this if he hears this. I woke up super hungover the day before the Zolder thing, or 2 days before Zolder. And I was like, I can't go back to sleep. Let me see what's going on Twitter. Jimmy just posted that he needs commentators. And then he's like, it's not serious. It's going to be fun. This is for mental health. And I'm huge on mental health. Like, I'm very open about my anxiety, depression, ADHD. And he's like, I just need some people to help out. And I was like, I can fucking do that.
Yeah.
And so my hungover state, I was like, yeah, I could totally help, right? I do F1 watcher logs. I like to have a good time. And I know I've seen his other streams before where there's usually two commentators, so I can be the color commentary and let the serious guys talk about the serious things.
Color commentary
So
is a fun
super
commentary
hungover.
anyway.
It was like 4 or 5 a.m. my time, because right where Jimmy is, it's normal daylight hours. Sitting on the couch, I was like, yeah, I can definitely help out. Go back to sleep because I need it. Wake up the next morning, Jimmy messaged me, and he's like, hey, yeah, we just need help. This is going to be fun. He's like lighthearted about mental health. We're just going to have a good time. You're in. He's like, this is fine. Thank you so much for helping out. And I was like, great. And then I did it. And then people were like, you were funny. Would you like to commentate more? I was like, yeah, I would.
And there
This is
you go.
great. Plus,
It
I like
starts.
working the chat a lot. I think it's really important. I think, as you mentioned way earlier on, you need to, if Twitch chat is saying something, people are there because they also want attention. They want to be heard. They want their opinions heard. They want you to know what they said, that it's important, and you value that they're viewing and what they're saying. So if you mention something from chat, or you bring it up, or you interview the person that they want to hear, love it. People absolutely want that kind of real-time feedback. So I'm trying to convince other motorsports commentators, you gotta throw that in there a little bit. You gotta mention something or a comment, because that works for my Twitch.
We watch Twitch or YouTube live streams or whatever we choose to be our platform of choice for that kind of content. We watch it because we want to actively interact with what's going on our screen, right? Because if we didn't want to do that, then we would watch normal television or YouTube, a video on demand, right?
Right.
And I've always thought that the NFL, the MLB, basically any sport out there, they need to start embracing content creators, because the way to get some people in would be to let their fanboyism live with the content creator that they love. And that content creator then is presenting them a new sport. Recently, I think it was last year, maybe even the year before, timetable's all messed up, but Tim the Tatman, I've always been a fan of his streams, and I always watch Call of Duty over there because, well, Call of Duty streamer. He started doing football games.
Yes, right.
And I enjoyed watching the football games in that community so much more than watching football games in front of my television in my living room, that it completely changed the way that I watched football, and I enjoyed it so much more there. So I think what we need Formula One, we need NASCAR, we need all of these bigger motorsports that are looking for new viewership to embrace content creators. And even though the viewership is smaller, I think it's a different market that they're shooting for. You're not shooting for the diehard fan. You're not shooting for Tom, who wants to sit there with his telemetry and pay every little attention to the race. You want to branch it out and let the people talk about what's happening on the track. Let the chat talk about it. Let the people interact with the streamer, the content creator, because there is some little bit of me that one time I was mentioned on Tim the Tatman's stream at one of my random comments, and you get like that, like excited, like, oh my God, that's my comment.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You want that feeling. And I think if we embrace content creators a little bit more, so like, let's say you became the official F1 watch along stream or something.
Look, I'm working on it.
That would be amazing for you obviously, but also for F1 in general, because it's changing the way viewers are consuming the content. And the more important thing is that you're getting more fans consuming the content than doing these big giant network deals with ESPN, realistically. Like, I'll love it if it's on ESPN because it'll be more readily available to me, because Sky Sports, I'm sure you've experienced it, Ash.
Yeah, I can't press the red button on my remote as a Sky Glass customer. I hear that and I can't do it, and I always feel left out.
Yeah, and there's even some stuff, because I follow Sky Sports on Twitter, where it's just like, this content's not available.
It's blocked in your
area.
region.
You're like, what?
I'm like, I'm in the United States. What are you talking about?
Like, why are you?
How dare you?
Then don't show it to me. Just remove it from the time. Like, why am I seeing a block of content that I can't see? Anyway,
people are going to comment on you and be like, oh, because you're following them. I was like, no, it says advertisement or promoted tweet, which means they're promoting the United States, because they can do that. Because you can put regions. I know how Twitter promotion works. You can just put regions, age groups, and interest. So either they blanketed, targeted all F1 fans, or they specifically picked out United States, where you're like, I still can't watch this.
I can't.
So why would you push this here? To your
awesome.
point, Chris.
I can't watch the video that you're trying to get me to watch. Yay!
Feels like a poor use of marketing spend. That.
Right. Let's not allow them to do that on Gridfinder.
Absolutely not.
So, Ash, how long have you been sim racing for?
A year? 2-ish years? A year?
Nice.
A year sounds right.
What made you jump in the rig or on a controller or whatever your first experience was?
Tony Kanon.
Really?
So this is a great story. And this is also, I think, Tony does this well. This is why people give a shit about IndyCar from his stream or from the Twitch community. Is because he's that personality, and he's so genuinely kind that he doesn't have to be, right? He can just be his personality, and that'd be good enough. And I'm like, oh, what a nice guy. But he is also outwardly nice to other people who are into motorsports. If you're into motorsports, Tony Kanon's like, cool, you're great. Like, love this. Thank you for being passionate about it. Super excited. I was playing the F1 game, not seriously. So you do F1 watch-alongs. The next natural progression is like, sure, I'll play the F1 game. And I was like, this is fine. It's not, sorry, Formula One. This is not my favorite, but it brings an audience. I'm like, oh, you like the F1 game? I also do F1 watch-alongs, right? It's just, you just bring them in. Tony Kanon comes to my stream one day, and I'm playing American Truck Simulator or European Truck Simulator. I'm playing a truck simulator game. And we don't realize it's the real Tony Kanon. We're like, oh my God, is it you? And he's like, no, I'm just a big fan from Brazil. I'm just like a cab driver. And we're like, oh, welcome on in. And we're just like having a chat. And he gifted 5 subs. And we're like, thank you so much. That's so nice of you. Have a great time on work today. Thinking he's just going to go cab driving. And then I realized it's the real Tony Kanon a couple nights. And I go into his chat. I was like, Tony? And he's like, Ash, I had such a good time watching your stream. And I was like, what? And then eventually we kept chatting on Twitch. And then he goes, hey, you should try iRacing. Here's 3 months. Oh, wow. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, no problemo. But he was indoctrinating me into the sim racing cult. He might have won me over. And yeah, I've been doing that ever since. And I love it. I really like iRacing. I mean, obviously, I know you can't compare F1 22 to iRacing, but I just like it a lot more, and it just makes more sense. And I appreciate the sim racing communities or other streamers that I've found. And then, then you just become friends with Daniel Morad, and then he does, community nights with people where you can just jump into open lobbies with Daniel Morad, right? And then race against these incredible people, but, any iRating, doesn't matter, race clean, have a good time, right?
Yeah.
Finding those communities that promote that, where it's like, we don't care how good you are, just have a good time, race clean again, right? Don't hurt anyone on purpose. Just have a good time, enjoy yourself. Is huge.
That's something that in sim racing that I love. So I already mentioned that I really like to watch Tim the Tatman. I also watch Doc, but I'm never going to play with them, ever. Right. It's just never going to happen. In sim racing, you can literally hop into someone's stream. Doesn't really matter how big they are, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, join the league, and we're having a race later."
Yeah.
And then you're on the track with these people, and it feels like that extra level of inclusive that you really are looking for, especially if you're the type of person that's going to live streams and interacting in chat, because you want to have that community feel. And that's something about sim racing that I've never gotten from any other game genre ever, because it just feels like you can be a part of it all the time. Now, that said, the recent ESL event, I couldn't shake the feeling that since it was an exclusive event, and I understand the esports side of it, and it was also a game that you can't even play yet,
Right.
I couldn't shake the feeling of exclusiveness, if you will. It was weird because I'm like, okay, I know that the game will be available. I know that for a lot of these people, there are ways that you could race with them, but it felt a little more exclusionary than it normally feels in the sim racing world. So part of me gets a little worried that when doing esports, you are going to get to that certain level where all of a sudden there are, oh, well, you can't race in this series. You can only race in the lower one if you're a normie, I guess I'll say.
Yeah.
So do you think that esports will change sim racing to be a little bit more separated in its inclusion?
I don't think so. I think right now, for the exclusivity feeling that we're feeling, I think it's building the hype up for me, because I'm like, oh, I'm excited to try this and see if it actually works or how it goes.
Yeah.
If when like it comes, I'll download it, see how I feel, and then go from there. I also think some of these folks are still streamers, right? Like Yuri's a streamer and he holds open lobbies from time to time. Like you can still jump in their chats though and like play with them. So hopefully when Rennsport comes out and they have open lobbies, they'll be like, yeah, come with me and I'll tell you exactly like how I won this race or how I lost this race, or like we can all crash out together. Yeah, I think just building that exclusivity now is just building that hype up for the game that's not available and then
probably
becomes
right there.
available. But yeah, I think it'll be like iRacing where you can just jump in and then you'll be able to play, interact with the streamer in their chat and then hold open lobbies. I think it'll just be the same. The game's just not fleshed out yet for us normies.
Right.
And just letting people know, if you're a NASCAR fan, just NASCAR drivers all over iRacing Oval. It's great. Joey Stone was playing with was racing with William Byron. He just jumped into a lobby. He's like, I need to warm up. And like, there was a NASCAR driver there just hanging out, playing, racing trucks.
I recently drank the iRacing Kool-Aid and I'm fully addicted now, like 100,000% addicted to iRacing. I love it because it feels like you will always be competitive. So the iRating system, the safety rating system, it always feels like they're trying to make it, it's basically SBMM, which in other game genres is hated for some reason. But it always feels like you're going to be competitive and you're going to have a good time. So if you have a couple bad races, you're like, well, my iRating went down, but that's going to make it so that I can feel confident again and win a couple races. In Rennsport, do you think that they need to follow the same formula to keep it the same level of competitiveness?
Probably. I think that's what I guess I don't know what it's like in ACC. Is it something similar where...
Well, ACC has safety ratings and ratings and things, but LFM just came out, which is basically the iRating system for ACC, and it works fabulously. Now, ACC does attract, I don't know how to say this without sounding offensive, a different kind of driver. Just because there is a difference between a retail-based game where you pay the $60 in whatever DLCs and you're done, versus iRacing where you pay the yearly subscription plus all of the extra stuff. So there is a different level of racecraft that's on ACC than there is in like an iRacing system. And I just think it's because the rating system and the way that things are done is new. I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. I just think it's because it's new. But yeah, they do have a similar system. I think it's good for overall sim racing, but Rennsport is rumored to go subscription, or is it confirmed to go subscription? I can't remember. Do you guys know off the top of your head? I think it's in their beta server that you can join where they were talking about it. But
I actually think it's going to be free.
Well, it's going to be free to start.
Yes. So it's going to be I think it's going to be iRacing, but there's going to be a free tier.
Right. Okay.
Which is
that
interesting.
I wonder now, Ash, how do you feel about subscription-based versus retail-based? And retail-based, of course, I mean like a one-time purchase DLC stuff.
It just becomes like accessibility. I understand why they do it, but you just want. It's like an accessibility thing, right? How am I going to? I'm already trying to convince. If I was a kid, or if I'm in college, I'm trying to save up, right, and jump into the sport, right? Because Call of Duty, I can just throw a controller on, buy a controller for like X amount of money. My mom's like, "Great, go play for 5 hours. You're all set."
Right.
Like sim racing, right? You don't need a rig. Controller's good. But now, if I can buy the game for $60, like here you go, you're all set. But now I have to buy you a subscription and all these tracks. How much money am I spending on this? Is it really worth it? You're going to be dedicated to it. Are you going to be playing a lot? Like all these questions come into play. So, but I understand why they do it because of the cost. They do the track scans, etc. So, like, I get why, but I wish it was just like a one-time pay X amount of dollars. Here you go.
But what would that amount be? It would be like
right, exactly. What would that amount be?
£1,500.
Well,
because I think they have like an ultimate bundle where you can just pay an amount and then you just get everything forever for free. But I think it's like $1,000. I'm gonna have to look this up while you guys chat because I'm fairly sure that exists.
I would like it if there was. It altered the iRacing system a little bit because you have oval, you have dirt oval, you have road, and you have dirt road. Let's say you want to just race road. You could buy a road everything subscription where you pay. Of course, it'd have to be a higher fee than it's paid now, but you just get road, all the cars for road, all the tracks for road, and you pay a subscription for just that. I feel like the problem for me is where you're paying a subscription and then microtransactions on top of it feels a little odd. Not necessarily a problem because now that I've, like I said, fully drank the iRacing Kool-Aid, I'm like, oh, I just love iRacing and whatever, it's fine. But my son recently told me that he wants to get into sim racing. So I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to get you one of those wheel stands, which I got him a track racer wheel stand. I gave him my old Logitech wheel and we got him set up. Now he goes, what game do you play? Because I want to race against you. And I went, oh, no, I play iRacing. And I was like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to get a Xbox Live subscription. We're going to play Forza together first. We'll play like Forza Horizon and Forza Motorsport first.
Nice, yeah.
To get him into it's more of an arcadey style game to kind of get him into their Forza Motorsport gets into the realm of being, breaking points and a little bit more advanced, but it's not full on iRacing or ACC or something quite difficult, right? So I'm in the mode now where I'm like, okay, I would love to get him into iRacing, but the subscription and the additional costs are so much that I can't stomach it.
Yeah.
If you want to do a brand new series and you have to buy the car and all the tracks for that series, that's a big chunk of change. Plus your $200 for 2 years, I think, subscription fee, So I think, me personally, I would like it to be one flat rate for subscription, no additional transactions on top of it, or only additional transactions to buy the content you want, no entry fee, if you will.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
It's the double whammy that kind of makes me go, why are they doing that?
And again, right, how do you get more people interested in the sim racing? And they're going to watch this ESL, they're going to watch all these other competitions that hopefully grow out of this and be like, oh, this is great. How much is it to get a wheel for the first time person? Then it's like, okay, I'll do controller. But then we have that controller versus wheel debate, which gets toxic.
Yeah, it does.
So
it's like the keyboard mouse versus controller in Call of Duty. It's the same exact thing.
So it's just like, how much is but the game alone, to your point, we're like, how much is this game? Like, I got to buy these additional tracks if I want to race with my favorite streamers, etc. It just becomes something quite nauseating for someone to stomach.
I wonder how many people watched ESL because they watched, because their favorite team started this new thing or their favorite streamer started this new thing. And they instantly went, you know what? I want to get into this. And they searched for Rennsport. And they're like, wait, I can't.
This doesn't exist just yet for me.
I wonder how often that happened. Interesting. Well, we've taken about an hour of your time at this point.
Woo.
Woo. It's been a great interview so far, and I'm sure I could probably talk for another 2 hours. But
I wanted to ask about your judging thing that I saw.
Oh,
I went on and you did the judging thing. Have we got time?
How long is the podcast usually?
Well, we
try to keep it around an hour to an hour and 15. I think we've gone up to an hour and a half at times.
Hey, Chris, we make the rules here.
We do.
You can always use it for like later content or like other stuff. But yeah, if you just want to talk about it without recording.
I'm interested, right? So I've seen your content and I noticed straight away that it's different and it's varied. And a lot of people, I think, who start streaming, they kind of fall into the trap of like, okay, the algorithm wants me to do the same thing every single time so that they, that my viewers who come first time know they're going to like it second time, and the algorithm will reward that. So I'm always going to stream the same game at the same time with the same routine, blah, 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 blah. But yours is quite varied. I remember I've been on there once before and you were racing. I've been on another time and you had like a what's it called, a gavel, and you were looking at crashes. I think from the 24 hours. Was it Daytona? And you were like just like which I was really enjoying. Like
Daytona Court.
How do you Daytona Court? Right. So how do you plan your content? Do you kind of do you have like a real strategy? Do you kind of like sit down with a whiteboard and think up like creative things to do? Or is it kind of community generated ideas? How do you plan out your creativity?
Again, you ask these questions as if at some point, it's yesterday, so a week ago, I was like, these sim racing, I feel I'm getting bored. If I am bored, people will know. One, because I'm terrible at hiding my facial expressions. My old boss used to call me out all the time. He'd be like, oh, Ashley didn't like that idea. Because clearly my face would be like, that was a dumb idea from that person. So if I'm bored, it's obviously going to show. So how do I keep myself exciting? Because then I can excite other people and bring them in with my talking and other things like that. But if I'm bored, I'm going to be like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I just want to log off and lay on the couch all day. So I remember last week I was saying, oh, sim racing's getting kind of a little stale. These open lobbies. There's no big events coming up just yet. Because my community is a little bit more road-based, even though there was a Daytona 500. So Sebring's coming up. I'll do some content around there eventually. But I was like, oh, let me play. So what I did yesterday is I played Call of Duty with my sim racing wheel. I mapped all the buttons to my sim racing wheel, and my accelerator was shooting, my ADS was the brake pedal, and then me walking with the paddles. I figured it out, and that was hilarious because people, it's just me moving around like a bot on my sim racing wheel.
I was going to say, we're just looking at the sky a lot.
I killed someone. I had one kill. It was
nice.
Great. But I also did the joke is I left my streaming game as iRacing. So people would, because I would be on the bottom of Call of Duty streamers, but I would be on the top of iRacing streamers. But I still iRace from time to time. And people would come in and be like, this isn't iRacing. I'd be like, yeah, it is. It's new DLC. They didn't give us rain. They gave us this. I was like, you don't have to file a protest anymore. Yeah. I was like, you don't have to file a protest anymore. You just bring them to the gulag. Like, that's the joke I would make the whole entire time when people came in and be like, this isn't iRacing, blah, blah, blah. So it's just like a funny thing that I enjoyed myself people enjoyed if you still were into sim racing because I was using a wheel and they're like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is hard. And then people who like Call of Duty or just want a variety of content could watch me struggle. So it's really what I find interesting. Thursday, I'm just going to hang out and build my new rig that I got from Next Level Racing. I got an updated GT, so this will go bye-bye. And then I will set up my new rig, and we're just going to hang out and chill. And then Sunday will be my Daytona 500 watch along. So it's whatever I feel like doing. There is no strategy. There is no plan.
To be fair, like you were saying, Tom, a lot of streamers, content creators will get into that mode where they're like, oh, the algorithm, I got to focus on the algorithm. Instead of focusing on what the content creator wants or the viewer wants. And you get into this mode where you're like, I absolutely hate content creation because I have to do this. When there's no rules. There's absolutely no rules. And most of the successful streamers have kind of proven that there really aren't that many rules when it comes to it, as long as you build a community that's there for you, the creator, and not for... Obviously, there's going to be some people that only watch Call of Duty or only watch iRacing or only watch oval racing or whatever it may be. But those aren't your people. Those aren't the people that you want sticking around in your stream because then you can't do anything else.
To play the contrarian, the devil's advocate, is it possible that the big streamers you're referring to were only able to do whatever the hell they wanted and not follow the algorithm after they got big? And actually, they had to do an element of like grinding the algorithm to get big. And once you have a certain like critical mass of followers who are now genuinely coming back for you, at that point, you can do whatever you want. And then it's easy to be like, oh, I just stream whatever I want. It's like, okay, well, you do now because people would log in just because enough people get the notification on their phone, which means you trend in the game, which means you go to the top anyway and you get discovered. So I wonder if actually... Yes, all the big streamers can do what they want, but that's because they're big streamers. They're not big streamers because they've always done whatever they want. To what extent do you agree or disagree?
I don't know. I think I think there are those streamers that are only allowed to stream a certain type of thing, but generically speaking, I typically enjoy the ones that do whatever they want. Like, I enjoy your stream, Ash. I do, and I don't necessarily go to your stream for iRacing or for whatever you're doing. I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna watch whatever's happening here. It's almost like pulling up the guide on old school TV, where you're like, I don't know, I'm just gonna watch this, and whatever happens to be on this channel, I will just continue. HGTV is that thing for me because I'm 40, and like, I guess that's just like what I watch now. And it doesn't matter what show's on there. It doesn't matter
Just watch
who's
HGTV.
on it. I just watch HGTV in the background. And for me, a lot of the time, streamers are that type of thing where I'm turning on a personality that I enjoy watching because I'm not fully paying attention to what's going on the stream. I'm listening and then interacting when something pops up that I want to participate in, you know? So I don't know if it's necessarily because they were smaller. Now, content creation is way different than it used to be in the past, of course. Now it's not a game of, as long as you're there, you will grow. It's not like that anymore. But no, I don't necessarily think that it's because the big streamers are big that they can do whatever they want.
They're known for certain things. For example, people will come to me for motorsports, right?
Yeah.
Right. But I will talk motorsports if I'm ever playing another game. Or like we'll make motorsports jokes or talk about motorsport news if I'm ever doing variety content just because I want to change it up or do like a portal run or something. So like when I'm hanging out, like I'm still building my sim rig on Thursday. I'm not playing anything, but I'm still building my sim rig, so we can talk about sim rigs. We can still talk about coming up Daytona. We can still have a conversation about motorsports that I'm known for. So that was the whole concept of playing Call of Duty with a wheel, that sim racers will know how annoying it is to play a game that is not sim racing with a wheel. So that is entertaining to them. And then people who don't know are like, what? She's not using a control. It's something unique where I'm not using a mouse or a controller. I'm using a wheel, and it's weird. And like, what's happening?
There's a huge audience out there for weird controllers. Like, there's that one girl that plays with a flute.
There's
that
the guy would play with
bongos.
Yeah, someone had like a recorder, or like Guitar Hero is popular.
Yeah,
Guitar
I've
was
seen
really popular.
where they were playing two instances of the same game, one with a controller and one with like a Dance Revolution
that's cool.
mat. And I'm like, what? How do you? First off, I'm not good enough at the game to win with a controller, and you're doing it on a controller and a DDR mat. Okay, next level. Not for me. But yeah, I guess in the end, you still are a motorsport streamer.
Right.
But you do a bunch of other things to fill in the gaps, which actually probably in the end does keep your audience a little bit more entertained, because now they're not so much worried about, oh, she's doing the same track, the same car. Because you know, GT3 at Spa does get a little exhausting.
Just when you're just putting down laps, some people will want to watch that because it's like white noise. You just put it in the background and I'll be talking. But some people are like, there's no action. Like, you're just doing the same track over and over and over again. Nothing's really changing unless I'm racing. But even then, if it's a 24-hour, 12-hour, you're just zooming in circles. So I understand why sim racing might not be for newer audiences, and that's why sim racing streamers cap at a certain point.
Yeah,
because it's just the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So you got to toss a little bit of variety there.
I think that's true. I think that's true with literally any content, because like Tim the Tatman and Dr. Disrespect are two of my Call of Duty streamers that I watch, and I think they do a good job of keeping some variety but also keeping their base. So they play Call of Duty, but Tim the Tatman does chatting. Dr. Disrespect is like old school WWF before it was WWE for me, where it's like the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan type showmanship, and I just I respect the game that he's playing. And at the level that he's playing it, not the video game, but like the streaming game, where he's made a personality and he's becoming someone else in a way. So I guess Tom is out for the count now. I don't know what happened.
Tom has
with
left
his
the
computer.
building.
Tom has left the building, but
small technical issues.
Oh,
it happens.
We have his mic though, yeah. So, but I don't really have any other questions necessarily. Nothing that I want to dive into, because I'll hold a bunch of time extra over the hour and a half or whatever. But Ash, where can people find you now? It's pretty easy. You're pretty much Ash Vandelay everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
everywhere. Yeah, there's no underscore or exclamation points. There's Ash Vandelay, Vandelay. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch.
Everywhere, yeah. I really enjoy your TikTok content because as much as I try, and I try not to pull that app up, it's so amusing in those moments
just
where
easy.
you're bored and you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll just flick through some content real quick and amuse myself for, oh, it's been 3 hours. Dang it, you know. But well done on the YouTube Shorts and the TikTok
appreciate
stuff.
that.
It's very, very amusing, and I'll continue to be one of your viewers in your Twitch streams and all that. But do you have a normal streaming schedule that you kind of stick to, or is it kind of random? And as long as they follow you, obviously they can get notifications. But
Yeah, as long as you follow me, you'll get notifications. I do my best to stream Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Like around 6:30 p.m. Eastern is my usual time. That might be changing with some stuff coming up, some announcements, but we'll talk about that maybe some other time.
Yep.
And I definitely, on race weekends, for Formula One, I stream an hour before race and qualifying start, and NASCAR about half an hour before. So if you're into IndyCar, NASCAR, or Formula One, just join the stream during or a little bit before the race. We'll be there.
well, if you're a fan of racing, interestingly enough, you can become a fan of NASCAR relatively quickly. I had my first ever commentary for a Daytona 500 this
Ooh.
last weekend, and I had never
Awesome.
done NASCAR stuff ever. Never done oval. I've always been a road guy, GT3 pretty much exclusively. And then I hopped on for Marconi Entertainment's Daytona 500 last week for the Sim Racers for Mental Health stuff, and learned a ton and learned how interesting oval racing can actually be and how much is involved in it, and ultimately ended up becoming a fan. So
Welcome.
if you've never watched oval racing before, a good way to start is to start with someone like you who wants to bring some more fans in, for sure.
Right, and I don't know everything, and I think I'm okay with that. I'm not. I always say on stream, I'm not above Googling. If someone in chat doesn't know, we have a few people who work for NASCAR teams that are in the community. They'll answer questions, but at some point, I'll just Google your question, and we'll learn together, and I'll send you the source. Like we can learn together, and that's okay.
I've always said there's no shame in not knowing something,
Yeah.
ever. So don't worry about that. But
And if you're ever wrong, Twitch chat will definitely correct you. So there's always that too.
yeah, you know, they always have the answers, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, Ash, we really appreciate you being on the show.
you for having
Tom,
me.
if you're still there, you there with us?
I am still here.
Okay,
I'm still
microphone
here.
only for Tom at the moment. But Tom, do you have any last questions or anything to say to Ash?
No, thank you very much for your time. It has been incredibly interesting, and I have been enjoying the variety that your stream offers. And you know what?
Appreciate
Here's a little
Tell me.
a little secret. I have never ever watched a watch along of anything ever.
Ooh, interesting.
So I might try some F1 watch alongs. In
Yeah.
fact, I might try some NASCAR watch alongs because I'm also not a NASCAR guy yet.
It's
Yeah, do that. Because I know
yeah.
you just mentioned you're into Formula One, like you super watch into it. So for you, maybe a watch long isn't great. A lot of people do come into my stream, put me on mute, and just chat in the chat, which I appreciate too. Because they're like, I want to watch the race, but I also want to chat with people, but I can't listen to your voice and watch the stream at the same time. But yeah, no, NASCAR would be great, or IndyCar, or maybe I'll do an IMSA stream. 12 hours, I'll just sit on Twitch. But no, we'd love to have you, Tom. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I know you guys can invite a lot of guests and a lot of people, so I appreciate you taking the time and having me here.
Oh yeah, we we definitely wanted to get you on the show, so appreciate you saying yes. And maybe we'll have you on the show again after some of these announcements.
If I
that
play my
hear.
cards right. Yeah. That'd be cool.
Well, thanks a lot, Ash. But that's a wrap for us today. Well, Tom, we just got to speak to Ash Vandelay. That was a fabulous conversation. Anything stand out to you?
She was great. She was very expressive. You can see how her like watch alongs and her just chatting streams are so popular because she has so much to say, and she's got some really interesting opinions, but not just interesting opinions. Like she has different like perspectives on like the way that she kind of colors her opinions are quite interesting. So it was interesting talking to her about ESL R1 and getting her perspective on it, both as like a sim racer, a streamer, someone who might class themselves as in the industry, but then also from like a casual driver's perspective.
Yeah, it's nice to have that infectious personality, especially being the fact that she is a content creator. So I'm sure, I mean, I'm one of her viewers, you sound like you're going to become one of her more frequent viewers. Maybe just some NASCAR watch-alongs will get you
100%. Yeah.
being a fan of
NASCAR.
the American NASCAR racing. And yeah, that was a fabulous episode. And hopefully at some point in the future, we can bring her back on the show. And that'll be when we have is ESL R10 going to be a thing? Does it just increment round?
Well, we don't have to wait until ESL R10. Let's do ESL R2.
R2, right. But hope you all enjoyed this episode of Sim Sundays. Of course, this episode is sponsored by Track Racer. If you're looking to upgrade your rig, get off that desk-mounted setup, go to trackracer.com, TRAK, no C in track on there. And anything you would like to say to the listeners and viewers, Tom?
Nope. I'm enjoying our new pre-recorded format. It's nice. It's nice that we get to do this little like post-episode reflection. It feels like we're like live journaling our podcasting journey. It feels wholesome, man.
Yeah, it does. And it also is opening up a lot of doors in the guests that we can have on the show, because we are no longer schedule prohibitive for a lot of these guests being Sunday nights only. So this is going to be a huge year for Sim Sundays. Keep an eye out. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Anchor, or any podcast service that you do prefer. We have some big guests in the near future. But that's going to do it for this episode number 35 of Sim Sundays. We appreciate you listening, watching, however you consume the content, and we will see you next week.
Goodbye.